The man was freezing to death, but he took off all his clothes, curled up naked in the snow. His teeth chattered from the cold. He could only blow on his palms, but it did nothing for him. He didn't put his clothes back on. Instead, he looked at the plastic bag in his hand, then stared at the ground, and made a difficult decision. He poured out the flour in the bag, filled it completely with snow, and held it tightly in his arms. By nightfall, the snow hadn't melted at all. Worse still, his clothes were still wet. His pent-up emotions finally erupted. He roared about his misfortune. Just then, he saw a villa on the top of the mountain. The man danced with excitement. To preserve body heat, he had no choice but to put on the wet clothes. Then he hit the big trees to collect dry bark. After doing all this, he fell into a deep sleep. On the morning of the third day, he finally drank fresh water, then checked his phone and radio. Luckily, neither of them had shut down. Everything was ready. The man set off excitedly for the mountaintop. As time passed, his vision began to blur. Hunger swept over his entire body. He walked purely on instinct. When he was almost at the mountaintop, he was completely stunned. There was no sign of the villa at all. It was just an illusion, born out of his despair. Devastated, he stumbled and fell to the ground, losing the will to survive. When he woke up again, it was already the morning of the fourth day. He tried to stand up, but fell again. A sharp pain shot through his right leg. The man rolled up his pants leg and saw his sock covered in blood. Even his calf was purple. He realized he couldn't wait any longer. He had to treat the wound. He gritted his teeth and tore off the sock suddenly. The wound was torn open instantly. Pain spread all over his body. He didn't care about anything else. He tore off a piece of flesh, struggled for a long time, and finally put it in his mouth. After resting for a while, he started walking again. Suddenly, from above, came the roar of a helicopter. Great! It was the search and rescue team. He shouted for help loudly, but the distance was too far. He turned on the radio again, hoping they could pick up the signal, but it was all in vain. He watched the helicopter leave helplessly. In despair, the man seemed to see his mother. If he died like this, what would happen to her mother? Somehow, he held on until the 8th day. He didn't want to wait for death here, so he continued climbing towards the mountaintop. He was almost there, but the next second, he collapsed from exhaustion. He didn't wake up until much later. The radio still had no signal, and it was about to shut down. He didn't scream or shout. Instead, he calmly left his last words and took one final look at the snow-capped mountains. Just as he was about to face death, the radio finally picked up a signal. The boy picked up iron nails with his mouth. Then he swallowed them quickly. Suddenly, he retched violently. The boy spat out an egg directly. The audience around were stunned by this scene. As he spat out more eggs, the audience stepped forward to reward him one after another. After a hard day, he returned home. He reached out and pulled a silver coin from his mother's hair. Then he asked his mother to shake him. More silver coins fell out. His mother laughed excitedly. The boy promised her he would earn more money in the future. However, 10 years passed. He still performed on the street. The money he earned was only enough to fill his stomach. He thought he couldn't go on like this. It was time to make some innovations. Houdini went to the police station. He threw all his savings on the table. He bet with the sheriff, saying the prison here couldn't hold him. To witness the bet, Houdini also found reporters. The angry sheriff cuffed him, searched his whole body thoroughly, then locked him in the cell. His wife kissed him goodbye reluctantly, which aroused the sheriff's suspicion. After a careful check, nothing was found. Once everyone left, he began his wonderful performance. After that, Houdini became famous everywhere. However, he knew clearly in his heart, this alone couldn't keep the audience. So he found the sheriff again. This time, he wore nothing. His whole body was bound with iron chains. Facing the sheriff's provocation, Houdini smiled disdainfully. Then the police carried him into the cell and sealed his mouth. But as soon as everyone left, Houdini immediately started his performance. He opened his hands, revealing 6 fingers, then poured out the keys from them. When the crowd came back, the cell was already empty. Only the sheriff was left in helpless fury. With extensive media coverage, Houdini reached the peak again, but he was still not satisfied. He wanted to create more thrilling magic. Despite the objections of his assistants and wife, Houdini entered the water tank upside down. Exhausted, he couldn't exert strength, so he signaled to pull him up. His wife realized something was wrong, but at this moment, the tank lid had a problem. At the critical moment, the assistant smashed the tank with an axe. Houdini escaped death. He told his assistant this was fantastic. Soon came the day of the water tank performance. He ordered to lock his feet. He was lowered into the water upside down. The lid above was tightly closed, and even locked with iron locks. It was an unprecedented performance. The audience couldn't help talking. However, 3 minutes passed. There was no response on the stage. People began to feel anxious. His wife was also infected by this emotion. She quickly asked the firefighters to rescue him. When the screen was pulled open, the water tank was empty. It turned out Houdini had already escaped. The performance was a great success. Houdini was pushed to the altar again.